Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Can you see
Hey,
me?
Cyril, how are you?
Good to see you.
Actually, I like the background there. Where are you right
Yeah,
now?
we are at the pavilion Charles Heidsieck. So I get the view on the garden, and on the backside you have some vin clair, some still wines.
How was your day today?
Today it was quite busy, but actually since the picking is fully finished, it's the kind of boring phase of paperwork. So we need to just check everything is in perfect order. Because in France we do love paperworks.
Well, I've
And
heard
so
that, yeah.
my day was not the most glamorous, but someone has to do it, and hopefully it's not every day like that.
So harvest is done. You're fully done picking?
Yes, totally. We finished the last picking last Friday, so everything is done. Very promising. We're optimistic about the quality. So it has been 3 very good years in a row. So
Wow.
we cross fingers, but I'm very optimistic.
That's pretty unusual because yeah, usually you didn't have any issues with hail this year or anything like that, frost?
We had a lot of heat waves. We had several phases of heat waves, and also it has damaged, of course, some fraction of the vineyards because some grapes, some berries have been burnt by the sun, which we tend to observe more and more often nowadays because of the global warming.
Right.
Yet, apart from that, we have suffered from a lack of water. It's especially true for the young vines because their roots is not going very deep because of their age, and
Right.
so they suffered a bit of lack of water. But apart from that, we had from there to there a little bit of I would say odium. We had like no mildew, we had like no botrytis because it was really too dry. And Chardonnay was here and there a little bit impacted by odium, but nothing critical.
It's crazy. So because you never heard that in Champagne. So I guess if there's a bright side to anything, global warming to a certain extent is making things more reliable for you, it seems like. Well, the water is obviously an issue, but yeah, it's crazy.
As far as I can remember, the last time we had a kind of trio of vintages like that, it was 88, 89, and 90.
Wow,
And in the meantime, we had that no trio of the same caliber.
wow. So three amazing vintages to look forward to. It's
Yep,
still
and
a
quite
ways
different,
off.
quite different.
Yeah, exactly. So for those joining in, let's go ahead and get started officially. So thank you for joining in to our Instagram Live. We do this every Thursday, so make sure to check back every Thursday. We do it at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Today, we're extremely excited and honored to have Cyril Brun. He's the chef de cave of Charles Heidsieck Champagne. So let's, before I hand it over to you though, let me just show. I'm sure everybody has heard of Champagne and knows Champagne, but just let's show everybody on the map real quickly. So we're way up in northern France, the purple region up there, north of Paris. I've been there several times and took the TGV, the bullet train, the fast train, and it only takes like an hour, hour and a half. Cyril, it's
Yes, from Paris, it's even faster. It's 45 minutes.
45 minutes from Paris. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a very quick trip. So next time you're in Paris, when we're able to travel again, that is, 45 minutes, you could be right in Champagne and talking to Cyril in person. So let me hand it over to you, Cyril. I want to go before we get into some specifics and blending and some of the specific wines. Tell us just a bit of history of Charles Heidsieck, a bit of your history, how you became, employed and working at the winery.
Yeah. So to make a long story short, Heidsieck is a name that is very famous in Champagne. There were several branches of Heidsieck, and currently we have three remaining branches from the similar one branch of Heidsieck that came to Champagne in the 18th century. So we have Piper Heidsieck, which is the oldest one, and it's within the same ownership than Charles. Charles is the other one, probably one of the most famous. And you have Heidsieck Monopole, which is now part of Franken Pommery. So together, Piper and Charles, we have been in the same umbrella since 2011 with the group EPI. EPI is a group that is owned by Mr. Descours and his family, and they have just joined the two wineries together. And yet we have just kept the very separate identity. even if we are sharing the kind of back office and some kind of resources, each and every winery is totally independent and separated. So we can really have parallel life. Of course, we talk together and we work together on a daily basis, but it's very important for us to have our separate identity. And the winery was created by Mr. Charles Heidsieck. He was a young man with a lot of ambition, and among one of his ambition, he wanted to conquest USA. That was the new world at the time. And so the winery has been created in 1851. A couple of years after the very creation, he traveled to the US and he started to be very successful over there. And he became quite a legend over there. He was nicknamed Champagne Charlie. So I can see there the picture, and there was a song that has been done behind the nickname Champagne Charlie. In the 80s, there was a movie that has been done that was a kind of biopic about the life of Charles Heidsieck. And the main character was played by Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant was playing the role of Charles Heidsieck. So he was really a legend during his life, which is quite rare. And even after that, he stayed very, very famous, and he's one of the most admired men in Champagne. And yet, the winery is still very known for that. Thanks to my background, I worked with my grandfather, with my father. So from my childhood, I wanted to become a winemaker. So I went to university. I studied science. And actually, my mom was a doctor. So she was pushing me to become a doctor. And studying science, my mother could, in some ways, believe one day I might become a doctor. But my dad, a very wise man, told me, don't be a doctor. You are going to meet sick people the rest of your life. If you make wine, you are going to make all the people you meet happy. So I listened to my dad, as you can imagine, and I have no regret about that. Even I have a lot of friends that are doctors. And so I studied winemaking. Yet, since I wanted to work in Champagne, I decided to do my internship outside of Champagne. And I was lucky one to work at Chateaubriand in Bordeaux.
Nice.
They make really decent red wine, and, yeah. and the white one is okay too. Yeah. Yeah. So I was super lucky, but I wanted to come back to my home region that was Champagne. And true story, I just applied to 2 wineries. So I sent a resume to Veuve Clicquot and to Charles Heidsieck. True story. And I just met the cellar master at the time, so Jacques Peters at Veuve Clicquot and Daniel Thibault at Charles. And finally, after a few interviews, Veuve Clicquot enrolled me, and I worked 15 years for the winery Veuve Clicquot in Champagne. Mm-hmm. And yet, after 15 years, I was offered to take the role of chef de cave at Charles. Nice. So a little bit more than 5 years ago. So I jumped on the boat, and so happy to be there.
So starting out with Veuve Clicquot is crazy because the size of the operation.
Yes.
So big. So just give people a reference. Charles Heidsieck is much smaller, I know, but I mean, they're not a grower, but definitely a much smaller house, right?
The ratio could be something like 1 to 25.
Wow. Okay, so 20.
So it's a true difference. Yes.
Right. So definitely, it has to just be a different sort of operation. So. When you were with Veuve Clicquot, were the only chef de cave, or what?
No. I was the deputy chef de cave, and Dominique de Marville and Jacques Peters. They were the 2 chefs de cave I worked with, and there was quite a big team for everything. And of course, all the roles were more sliced and separated. And in my current role of chef de cave at Charles, I feel like I covered the entire process. Right. From the viticulture to somehow a few business or commercial side. And it's very interesting because you have the global vision of everything that is happening into the winery.
Oh, that's very cool. So you mentioned the viticulture side. So let's start there. So tell us just a bit about your vineyards. Do you own any of your own vineyards?
Yes.
How many crews? Let's get into that a bit.
So we own about 80 hectares of vineyards that are spread everywhere in Champagne. We have mostly Premier Cru and other cru, and we have a few plots in the Grand Cru. And our vineyards has been certified HVE, Haute Valeur Environnementale, which means that's the highest grade you can pretend to get in Champagne. Yet this vineyard is supplying only a small fraction of our needs. So we are négociant, meaning that we are purchasing some grapes every harvest to some suppliers, and some of our suppliers have been working with the winery for 3 or 4 generations. So it's not our vineyards, but it's exactly they use the same method, and we know each other very well. So we talk a lot during the year, and the grapes that deliver to us are very similar to the one we make on our own, because they follow exactly our guidelines. And they are very proud to deliver their fruits to Charles Heidsieck, of course, because there is a part of them in each and every glass of champagne Charles Heidsieck.
Exactly. It's nice to have that, generational support and to have that history, because you know who you're dealing with, you know the quality you're going to get. There's not going to be any question of the quality. So how many different crus or plots do you sort or do you buy from?
So typically we are covering for Charles about 50 different crus, so 50 different villages. It's already a kind of very severe selection, because you have to keep in mind you have about 320 different villages in Champagne. So just taking 50 of them, it's already a very strong selection. Mm-hmm. Yet, if we talk about plots, you can just multiply by at least 20. So if you put all together, it's about 1,000 different plots that are just selected. And a plot can be just like your garden, or it can be much, much larger. Yeah. So it has to do with the profile of our champagne. We are considering that diversity means complexity. Right. So when you use grapes from various zones, from various type of vigneron, you will have young vine, you will have old vines, you have the 3 varietals, you have the Pinot Meunier, the Pinot Noir, the Chardonnay, and all that together will really create diversity, meaning for me complexity. That's the art of blending. You select Pinot Noir when you say it's 40% Pinot Noir, 40% Meunier, Chardonnay, and 20% Meunier. Yes, it was almost starting to get darker. When you have 40% Pinot, 40% Chardonnay, 20% Meunier, it means nothing. It's just figures, because 40% of Pinot Noir from there is totally different. So it's my role, it's my job to just make sure that I will select exactly the type of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, or Meunier that will just exactly fit in our ambition in terms of signature, in terms of style.
Right. So when things are harvested and brought to the winery, are they kept separately? Are they blended together?
No. Of course, we keep everything separately because in one tank you will get only one varietal from one harvest and from one village or group of village, neighborhood villages, because we want to preserve the identity. And my role is to blend. You don't blend when receiving the juices. You keep everything separated, and then you test all the tanks several times. And when you have just fully understood what can be expressed in each and every tank, you start setting up the blend and mixing all the different ingredients.
So how many different tanks do you have? You must have hundreds of tanks.
Well, we have two different profile of tanks. We have the tanks that are used for reserve wines, and we have close to 300 different tanks, mostly large tanks. And we have the tanks for just vinification, so fermentation. And we have another 250 roughly. So it's a lot of tanks. And some they are used just for a couple of weeks during the year, and that's it.
So 500 or 600 different tanks.
Yes, exactly.
Let's get into the blending, because this is what blows my mind. So you take a bit from each tank, and then you start sampling, and then what's the process? How do you figure out?
We know already that there are some tanks that are not going to be touched in the next 10 or 15 years, right? Because that's the reserve wine that have a lot of potential, and it will take a lot of time to really reveal the potential. So these tanks are clearly identified, they are put apart. And of course, I check and monitor the evolution, but I know that those tanks are not going to be touched until 10 or sometimes 20 years.
Wow.
So that's the tank that are at the very back of the winery, because we know we can almost like forget them, and we don't need to plug a pipe every year to take a fraction of the tank.
Right.
Um,
So
and
that's the
then
reserve wine.
that's the reserve wines,
Okay, so
exactly.
that's the reserve wine, right?
And the reserve wines for us, currently, it's almost like half of the blend. Half of reserve wine is kind of unique, and I would not say extreme, but there are very few wineries that use such a high level of reserve wines. And apart from the quantity, what is interesting is the depth or diversity of reserve wines. And we tend to use a lot of old reserve wines, and those old reserve wines are going to really play a major role when it comes to texture, to creaminess, to silkiness in terms of signature on the palate. And of course, it will bring complexity in terms of flavors. And we have, in many cases, we involve reserve wine that are exceeding 20 years of age.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So even like as an example, so here you have the picture and some of the blends there. So you'll make the blend, the assemblage, and then it goes into bottle.
Yes, exactly. The
And
blending
is the reserve wine added in at that point, or the reserve wine is added at the final stage, right before corking?
and from March to, let's say, July, it's the bottling time.
Okay. So I missed you there for a second, but when you're doing the blend before you put the wine into bottle, you're blending in reserve wine at that point?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
We are going to use half of reserve, half of fresh wine, so from
Right.
the freshest harvest, and it takes hours and hours to really fine tune the blend. Yeah, of course, a lot
So
of tastings.
I don't know how you do it, honestly, because it sounds so complicated. And I've tried to do blending a few times at wineries, just blending like 3 or 4 things together, and it's complicated. It's I always say it's very difficult to blend together
The,
to make a rainbow. It's very easy
yeah,
to blend things together to make mud, but making
yeah,
a rainbow is the difficult thing. So
yeah, that's true.
how
And
many?
the thing is that when you compare blending to cooking, for instance, when
Right.
the chef is using different type of ingredients, spices, you have the kind of instant result. You can test and you know if it's good or not good. When I bottle some of my blend, in some cases I will have the result in 10 or 15 years.
Right. So
Because
you need,
we are talking about wine that are going to spend many, many, many years in our cellars.
yeah, it's so
So
much pressure because you're making thousands of bottles of wine, and then it's fingers crossed through experience and history that it's going to work out. So I don't know how you guys do it, honestly, but you do a spectacular job. So keep up the
thank you.
great work. I
Thanks a
want to
lot.
show a few pictures of your cellars because they're just spectacular. Before we get into some of the wines here, tell us a bit about the cellars and how they became.
So the cellars have been dug during the Roman time, so more than 2,000 years ago. So when the Romans, they invaded France, they wanted to find some raw materials to build some elements of architecture from their civilization. So
Mm-hmm.
some temples, some things like that. And they found this kind of huge piece of hill, which is made of chalk. It's pure chalk. You have 400-meter deep chalk in that very specific district of France called Les Crayères. And of course, they were just digging, and when they were just reaching 35 meters below the surface, they were reaching a much harder profile of chalk, so they were stopping digging. And so we finished like the pyramid you can see on the picture, and they were moving 20 meters, digging another crayère, doing one more time, and currently under my feet over there,
Mm-hmm.
we have 47 crayères like the one you can see there.
Wow,
So
47.
yes, it has been classified as a part of the Universal Patrimony by the UNESCO 5 years ago.
That's beautiful. It's just really breathtaking. So this was all carved out by hand by the Romans.
Exactly, by the slaves of the Roman,
Yeah.
meaning the French at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, jeez, it's crazy just the scale of it. And did you did in modern times did you carve that to look like a bottle? Because I saw this picture. I thought that was cool.
Yes, it's a crazy, crazy story. It has been dug 2,000 years ago. And it happens that one of the shape of the Crayer number 9 is just looking like a bottle of champagne.
Oh,
And for many, many years, we have been using the regular bottle, champagne bottle, which is this one, regular
hmm.
champagne bottle shape. And we had just in front of us what should be the Charles Heidsieck bottles.
Yeah,
And it took us a few years to really realize that we had our own bottle in front of us,
right.
and we had never used it. So all the bottling from 2007 were made in that Charles shape Crayer.
That's very cool. So it's just purely random that that one mimics your
Yes, of
exact
course.
bottle, and it's cool that you know that you've now made your bottle shape, in that form. It's really cool.
But
So
in a way, we can claim that our bottle has been designed by Italian designer 2,000 years ago.
exactly, exactly. So you got to give the Italians a little credit, not much. Okay, as tends to happen on these, we're running short on time, as what happens. So let's get into discussing a few of the wines before we have to sign off. So tell us a bit about the Brut Reserve. This is the classic, what we all know
Yes,
and love. Um, let's start
that's
there.
that's really the one that is encapsulating the style of Charles. It's really fleshy, opulent, rich. You have exactly the role we expect to get from the reserve wines. This kind of complexity, this richness. It's quite generous, but
Mhm.
at the same time, it's never heavy. You don't feel like saturated when you have a glass of champagne. Trust me.
Cheers.
And you have always this kind of salty finish. It's quite mineral at the same time. So it's really our vision of essence of balance when we
Mm.
talk about the Brut Reserve, and that's the one that is also conveying all the DNA from the winery. So that's the one that is the most complex to make, since the identity should never change. So every year we have to recreate the same wines from changing ingredients. So that's the big challenge with the non-vintage. And currently in the range, we have three non-vintage. We have the Brut Reserve, which is the flagship, of course, from the winery. And we have two brother and sisters from the Brut Reserve. We have the Blanc de Blanc non-vintage, kind of recently reintroduced. Long story, we have been making Blanc de Blanc. Then we stopped and we've made
Ah,
it again. And we have the Rosé non-vintage as well, which is doing also very well on the market. So those three non-vintage are really made to cover most of the needs from the champagne lovers. Typically, I would say it's fine as an aperitif, but it can cover just more than just the aperitif, because you have enough structure, enough body. You can have a nice starter to go with the three non-vintages.
let's talk about that for just a second because so many people don't open a bottle of champagne when they're considering dinner. They'll use it as a celebration, they'll use it as a toast, maybe as an aperitif. But I really love champagne with a meal,
Yeah, of
especially
course.
your the Rosé Reserve and the Brut Reserve. So outside of just an aperitif, what do you like to pair with your champagnes?
Myself, I like to pair fish, seafood
Hmm.
more globally with champagne, because you have this kind of mineral flavors from the ocean that is going to really give the right echo to the minerality you get from the choke from champagne. That's probably my best pairing or my favorite pairing. The other one I like is cheeses. Same reason, because of the milkiness from the cheeses. And we live in France. We know that France is probably the kingdom of cheeses,
For
and we have
sure.
a huge diversity of cheeses. So champagne and cheeses would be my second choice when it comes to pairing.
No, I love that because it cuts through the razor sharp acidity, cuts through that richness and balances
Yeah.
it all out. Um, we can't let you go without speaking about your prestige cuvee. So I know that 2004 was released not too long ago. Give us a bit of history on this and why it's so special.
So the Blanc des Millénaires is our prestige cuvée. It's a Blanc de Blanc. It's only made from Chardonnay. That's really the expression of the Côte des Blancs. The Côte des Blancs is a very famous region in the south of Epernay, where you have mostly Chardonnay in that zone. And Daniel Thibault, the father of the Blanc des Millénaires, decided to select only 5 of those Grand Cru and Premier Cru from the Côte des Blancs to set up the blend. So we have north to south, we have Cramant, Avize, Auger, Lemille-sur-Auger, and Vertu. And each and every village is going to account for 20% of the blend. So we have exactly the same contribution of each and every village. Yet, what is interesting is the identity of each village is going to really create a synergy. When you add 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, it doesn't give 5. It gives 8 or 9 because they really talk together, and you really extract the best of each and every village. And at the end, you have a unique piece of art, a pure beauty of Chardonnay, because you will find what you expect to find in a Chardonnay. It's going to be quite sharp, very precise, with this kind of mineral touch. But at the same time, you have this generosity, this kind of creamy, silky finish that you might not suspect to find in a Chardonnay from Champagne. It has some kind of burgundy little touch in some vintages, of course.
And it's beautiful. And the crazy thing to me is before the 2004 was the 95, which yes. I drank many bottles of that 95. It was delicious. And
right.
And the 04 is great as well, and you can just tell it has the same trajectory.
And what is interesting when we talk about the Blanc des Millénaires, you feel like that the recipe, so the identity of the wine is bigger than the impact of the vintage, because when you put side by side a 95 and 2004, you can hardly find most opposite vintages than those two in the recent times. Yet when you test the Blanc des Millénaires, you feel like the recipe is stronger than just the footprint of the vintage.
Such a cool package too. This gift box that it comes in, mimicking the cellar, is beautiful.
Yeah.
You did a great job with that. It's really pretty. Yeah, it mimics. There you go, right there. So there's
exactly.
That's very cool. So let's actually before we do that, I'm seeing some comments come across, some people giving other recommendations for pairing. So caviar, I totally agree with. Oysters every single time. Soft fried chicken, which I love. It's funny how French fries and fried chicken will really go good with with champagne. So I wanted to mention a few of those. People were mentioning some other pairings which I really loved. So you were in our offices. I think this was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I came in just before the lockdown. I came in New York beginning of March. I was there. Yeah.
Well, you made it just in time. It was
exactly. Yeah, I know that they shut down the city just the day after I left. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're right there in the middle to the left, holding the bottle, and then I want to give a shout out to Philippe Andre too, because he's amazing. He's the U.S. ambassador for Charles Heidsieck. So he's fourth from the right, the dapper tall guy with the nice goatee.
You cannot miss him on the picture. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you don't follow him, follow Philippe Andre's Instagram, because he does all sorts of great things. He does something he calls Charlie Chat, which is his Instagram live, but talking about Charles Heidsieck. He was doing a really cool one, a couple of them, talking about champagne and cigars, which I thought was really cool. And he does all kind of awesome stuff. So follow Philippe Andre. He does good stuff. I just want to show this other picture too. You did a nice seminar with our staff, and it's, I could just say from Touton, it's really an honor and a privilege to represent Charles Heidsieck. It's just a historic house, and I worked in retail for many years and have sold your wines for 20 plus years. So it's an honor to have him with Touton and with the team. So thank you again.
It's a true pleasure.
So I wanted to mention one more thing because I was speaking with Philippe, and he was saying something about the Narita restaurant in the Lower East Side in the East Village. And he was saying you have a bit of a Hawaiian shirt collection. Is that right?
Yes, I'm not wearing one tonight, but yes, I got a few, and I think it's a cool look. And I mean, you can be serious, drink serious champagne while wearing a Hawaiian shirt.
I agree with you 100%. So he was wondering, is that somehow connected or inspired by that restaurant, or that's something you already had
It's
going on?
it's a lovely place. The food is gorgeous, amazing people, and I had the chance to go there, and it's quite an experience. And I had some Hawaiian shot before, but that's really the place to wear them.
Yeah, exactly. I know last year you did this crazy tasting with Blanc de Millionaire. You did what, six vintages and
Exactly,
all
the
the other.
entire vertical testing. Yes.
Yeah, when we open back up again, we need to do that again.
Yeah.
I missed the last one.
Anytime.
Yeah.
We miss you all so much. I would be so happy to come and do this kind of stuff.
No, it was great. Well, we're a bit over, but thank you so much for your time. It was great. We quickly ran through the wines, quickly ran through some of the history. But if you haven't had Charles Heidsieck recently, definitely check them out. The wines are spectacular. And Cyril, thank you again.
Thank you
And
so much.
cheers.
Cheers.
I wish I had a glass, but cheers. Hopefully we'll see you again early
Yes.
next year in New York. So
Thank you, guys. Bye bye, everyone.
have a great rest of the week. Cheers.